Well, hello and welcome to Fun Fantasy FPL. My name is Harry.
And I'm Stephen Berry.
And on today's show, we're going to be reviewing our games as usual, talking about what our moves are and such. But then we've got a topic which is about tinkering, over tinkering. Is it possible? The full answer is yes. And then we have the answer to our question from last week, our football heritage, as I like to call it, and our terrible introduction to that round, and then another question to follow up with afterwards. So, but before we kick that off, Stephen, why don't you tell us how your week has gone?
So I got 51 points when the average was 58. So while 51 isn't usually that bad of a score, it was a very high average. What let me down was my captaincy. So Vardy against Everton, he really let me down there. I had Son who got 10 points, Watkins got a goal, Solanke got some points as well. But yeah, Vardy didn't get anything for me in the end. So overall, it's not bad. I think 7 points below the average, 50 points. It's okay at this stage. But yeah, I was let down by my captaincy decision, and also having both Ben White and Saliba, the only two Arsenal defenders who didn't score against Man City, is also a little bit frustrating. But overall, not a great week, but also not a terrible one either.
Yeah, speaking of that last result, Stephen, how did you cope with that last-minute equaliser? And should Haaland be arrested for clearly assaulting Gabriel with the ball after again?
So I was actually very fortunate, if you want to look at it that way, that I was flying at the time. So my flight took off about a minute before kickoff and landed about a minute after the game was over. Obviously, the first thing I did was to see the score. I saw 2-2, Arsenal red card. I was like, oh, okay, that's not bad. I'll take that. And then I looked into how the 2-2 happened, and obviously I was quite gutted to read that. So I can't talk about any emotional live reaction because it just isn't the same. What I have been pleased at, though, is the level of head loss, in particular from Man City, appears to be towards that. They've just got a last minute equaliser. Yes, you're at home, but a last minute equaliser is a beautiful thing, especially when it's against one of your title rivals. You've stopped them from winning. They've made it sound like they've lost, or they've lost 4-0, or it was Arsenal who got the last minute equaliser. It's absolutely bizarre, some of the commentary that's coming out. And again, Haaland throwing the ball at Gabriel's head. Yeah, as I said, banned for life. In my opinion, would make the league a lot more interesting. But him going like, be humble to Arteta. I've never seen a team so rattled. Like this is Manchester City. They're meant to be this supreme Goliath, and what, just because they drew at home. The head loss is unbelievable. What do they want Arsenal to do? Go out there and attack from the off and lose 5-0 like Klopp did, in a heroic fashion? No. Like, the point is a very good result. They got a last-minute equaliser. They should be happy with that because Arsenal didn't win, but absolutely bizarre. Bernardo Silva's comments, absolutely insane. I've never seen such a head loss to a good thing, i.e. a last-minute equaliser.
I think they're probably more concerned about the Rodri injury.
Sure.
If I'm honest, I mean, that looks like a really severe tear. I don't think it's an ACL from everything I've seen so far, but it is certainly a couple of months. And they do have a phenomenal record with him, and also without him, it's also quite troubling. I of the same school of thought. I think it's a great result for both teams, but I think it's more a better result for Arsenal. They got themselves into the position to win the game. The red card is silly. We don't want to see red cards for that, but unfortunately, that is the letter of the law in the game. I'm sure some Arsenal fans will come to me on that, maybe you included, because there's been lots of similar situations been put out there in which players kick the ball away, all the rest of it. But I do think that maybe Trossard is a shithouse and known for being a shithouse, and as a result, he gets a harsh treatment. I don't know, but it was an interesting game. I was glad the way it went. But, I think Arsenal will be the happier for sure. And I'm sure you are, as opposed to Arsenal fans.
Absolutely. And just on the Trossard red card, so I've for a number of reasons sensibly have avoided this. Oh, there's such an agenda against Arsenal because look, there isn't. Let's be frank. If you watch us over the years, we tend to get more decisions in our favour than we don't. I do think, though, on this particular one, Arteta really didn't help himself last season with the Newcastle result, where, again, he just went completely over the top with the goal that that Newcastle scored. And I don't know if you remember the goal, but it potentially went out of play, and there was sort of potentially a foul. And then anyway, he just goes on this absolutely insane rant. And then what was quite interesting is that at one of the press conferences afterwards, all the journalists were like sort of lowballing him questions, because it's quite sad that football journalism, you can't really challenge the bigger managers, because they're the ones who give you the leaks, they're the ones who give you the stories. Fergie, one of the many things that he got wrong was the sort of destruction of journalism in football, and sort of led this way. So anyway, he was just getting these nonsense questions. He was able to talk his nonsense about the goal. But then the guy, who I'm assuming was from the Newcastle Chronicle, given his accent, well, he actually said to Arteta, "Look, can you actually, you're saying it's ridiculous. Can you actually explain why that goal should be disallowed?" And Arteta didn't actually mention anything about the goal ball going out, or the foul that led to or potential foul that led to the goal. He said it was like, "Oh, it was like 10 things before we even got there." So he didn't even disagree with the goal himself. He just, but so what that may have done is refs are human, right? The fact that he went on and on about that, and put them under the spotlight, the fact that he made such a big deal about the Rice thing, and saying like, well, I hope we're gonna have to have eight every week. Has he put a bit of a target on his back of Arsenal? Maybe. So that I'd say is one to watch. To be fair,
yeah, because didn't he say after the game, just next time, I'll just tell my players not to touch the ball at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Stoking fire there completely. But look, I think we've talked a bit about football there, but it's always interesting to get your take on that. Of course, my team gave me an early fright with another goal within the first minute. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. It was an absolute screamer. What a goal! Like, ball comes in the far left hand side, and on Bemo on the volley, middle of the box, rifles at top corner. I mean, what a player! Unbelievable. To some extent, you have to hold your hands up and say, yeah, great goal, and one that you can't do much about. But it really was a quarter snapping. I was glad that we came back and beat Brentford, but yeah, was not a surprise to see us 1-0 down in the first minute or two. And that kind of leads nicely onto. And before we go to my team, so what is your overall rank at the moment? Then, what have you finished on?
I'm currently 6.7 million.
6.7 million. Okay, cool. So yeah, climbing the ranks, which is good. I, on the other hand, was slightly below the average by 1 point and fell about 300,000 or 400,000 places. So I'm now outside of the top million, 1.2 million. Again, it's my defence is letting me down. I've been itchy driven with that wild card because my defence, I just hate it. I've got Mikalenko, who's trash. I've got Nico Williams, who's been playing every single game, now suddenly didn't play. I've then got Jan Bednarek, less said about that, the better, and Lewis Hall, who equally has lost his place, equally looks a bit like trash, and I'm not sure what to do with him. I think Robinson's been really unfair, because unlucky, because if you look at the Fulham defence, the numbers are pretty impressive. They actually are around the top for preventing big chances conceded, shots on target conceded. So they are in a really good spot. They're in good company. They're in the likes of Manchester City, Man United, Liverpool, Aston Villa. They're in the same brackets in terms of those sorts of stats, but they just concede late on quite regularly. And the really frustrating thing for a Fulham defender is they actually beat Newcastle. He should be walking away with a hat full of chances, maybe a bonus point. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So my defence let me down, apart from the wonder that is Dean Henderson, with a 9-pointer at home to Man United. 27 shots Man United had, which was insane.
Wow.
And they still managed to keep it out. But I was happy with that. And I guess also Morgan Rogers finally come through for me with a 10-pointer. Captain Salah, which was a mistake in hindsight, but Haaland, I think it was the right decision. João Pedro came on for a 1-pointer, blocking my ML Smith Rowe points of 8, who sits on my bench, and Saka got that lovely assist. So it's a difficult state of affairs for my team at the moment. I have already made my transfers, as we're recording Thursday for the benefit of the listeners, and I have brought in that man I was just talking about, Brian Mbeumo, who's got a good run coming up. And also I've taken out Isaac and brought in Nicholas Jackson. Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
I have gone for it. And yeah, Brian Obemo, I took out for Matoma, even though he got that assist. I wasn't crazy happy with his performance. And also, they've got a difficult run coming up. Now I've said that, of course, he's going to bang. I did these transfers before the news came out that João Pedro is not going to play this week. So that means I'm really hoping that all of my players play. Otherwise, my bench of Bednarek away at Bournemouth and Hall at home, to Newcastle are coming on. So yeah, taking a bit of a risk there. As I've always said, don't make early transfers, and it's back-to-back weeks of me doing so. So listeners, please do what I'm not doing, which is listening to my advice. Do not make early transfers. It's not worth it.
Do you know why the average was so high? So if Salah didn't bang, well, he got an assist, I think. Haaland got a goal. Why was the average so high?
I think it might be Luis Diaz. I think Gabriel was definitely hurting
Gabriel, yeah.
Trent got 11 points as well.
Right.
And then you've got players like Palmer who chipped in a bit, and others. So it's a combination of things, but the average was 58, which is, as you say, really, really high. And yeah, it means that I've gone down a few places, and unfortunately, I'm starting to get that finger over the trigger of the wild card. But yeah, still sitting at 1.2 million, which is by no means an issue per se. Fallen down a few of the leagues, and I'm now down to 12th in our mini league, which is upsetting. Wow. But I have to keep scrolling to find you, Stephen. So that's fine.
I was about to say I don't think I'm above 12th in any of my leagues so far. Oh no, I've got a cheeky 11th in one of them. So yeah, that's okay.
Awesome. But the nice thing is we've got people still joining the league as it speaks, as we're going through the competition, which is great. So keep joining the league. I'll share the link afterwards. We're going to be up to 33 players. So it's really interesting. It's not just all of our friends, Stephen. There are people in here who are just listeners.
Excellent.
Of the pod, which is excellent news.
Well, welcome to the league, guys. Great to have you.
Fantastic. So, yeah, Stephen, do you have any? I've mentioned my transfers. Do you have any transfers you're looking to make? Do you have 2 transfers this week? Have you banked some? What's the situation?
I have 2. I'm actually going to let it roll this week.
Ooh.
The reason being is, so I'm just going through my team quickly. So my back 3, Saliba and White against Leicester, Robertson away to Wolves, fine. Sanchez, who got 10 points, by the way, he's looking like one of the few things I got right was the best 4.5 million goalkeeper. So that's fine. My midfield, there's a lot of players there who are in last chance saloon. Foden, he's quite a big drag on my resources. I know he's just come back from injury, but he doesn't seem to be getting into the team. Jota, who got dropped from the looks of things. He played in the League Cup against West Ham. He started.
And back 2 as well.
So that's good, but Salah didn't start, for example. So if he doesn't start against Wolves, he's probably going to have to go. Nevertheless, I think it's worth holding on to. Gordon's, Gordon's another one, not sure. I've then got Ipswich. I've got Watkins against Ipswich as my captain, and Solanke, who, as I said, if he starts, he will start getting points, which he did in the last game. So if as I said, I think Foden, Jota, and Gordon are my concerns. I think they've done enough, well, either recently or historically, to deserve one more game. So if they don't do anything after this week, then I'll be looking to move them on. But so far, I'm just gonna roll my transfers.
Cool. So that'll be 3 transfers. Just for the benefit of the listeners, if you didn't know this already, there was a change in the rules this season where previously what would happen is if you rolled up a series of transfers, you had 2 transfers in the bank, or in this case, you can go all the way up to 5 this season, and then you wildcarded, you would lose all those bank transfers. So that is not the case this season. So Stephen, in theory, can get up to 5, do his wildcard, and then the week after do 5 free transfers. So it's actually a really interesting rule change, and I think it's worth banking up those transfers, because effectively what you could do is wildcard and treat it like almost a mini free hit, and then do the transfers to get it back to a team that you seem to be more appealing for you. And just in case there's any background noise for the listeners, I'm actually away again in Dijon, and it's currently raining, and I'm in an outhouse sort of area where the rain is quite loud. So apologies if there's any background noise there. But cool. Okay. And so no transfers for you. I've told you what my transfers are. I think we're going to go for a little break now, and then we'll come on to our topic afterwards. So see you in a sec.
See you in a sec.
And we're back, listeners. Thank you for sticking with us. And we were discussing lots of things in the break while Stephen made his lasagna. Yes, that is why we took a break. But I've just realised that my defenders next week have got a real problem. Bigger problem than they have all season, and that's saying something. So that's not even the week coming, it's the week afterwards. So the week afterwards, I will have Lewis Hall away at Crystal Palace, Robinson away at Man City, Mikalenko, who's at home to Newcastle, Nico Williams, who's away at Chelsea, and Bednarek, who's away at Arsenal. I mean, I want to change all of those defenders.
What's your most expensive defender?
Robinson.
Sorry, when I said expensive, I meant to say cheapest.
Cheapest is Bednarek. But I mean, the thing is,
okay.
Yeah, the thing is, from my perspective, right, is I was banking in a transfer to get rid of Lewis Hall and Mikalenko and gave me 8. So if I basically don't make a transfer, I'll bank up 2 and then take them both out. I think maybe like Wes Fowles and and then it was is it Mezrati who plays at Man United. He's 4.6. So yeah.
You're not considering a Brentford defender. The reason being is that, so yeah, I think Mbembo, by the way, is sort of a must-have now. Brentford's run-in, I've never seen anything so easy in my entire life. So they've got West Ham at home, who are trash. Potentially Locatelli's last game already, by the way, if they get battered there. They then have Wolves at home, who've had a very bad start. They think they have Man U away again, easy fixture. They then have Ipswich. I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically the next 10 fixtures are really, really good. They're either at home, basically their next 10 fixtures are very, very strong. So if you're looking for a cheap defender, can you not?
Yeah.
I mean, you may even double Brentford defender it. Really, that could be your escape route.
Well, yeah, and they have just signed that kid from Liverpool, Sepp van der Berg, who's 4.0. So yeah, he's definitely in my thinking. But yeah, we'll see. Look, that will go on to my next headache, I suppose, and listeners will enjoy me losing my mind over that. But we're going to crack on to the topic of this week's podcast, and that is tinkering. Now, it is quite a well-known fact that fantasy football players love to play with themselves, and also FPL. So we always overthink things. We always try and do lots of creative bits and pieces, myself included. I have a spreadsheet in which I try and plot transfers. And one of the errors that we constantly make is over-tinkering, playing around too smart. And the problem is that you bank in transfers doing that. So, and I wanted to raise up a particular example of someone that doesn't do that, and that is our dear and lovely editor, Rita, who currently sits 30,000th in the world, and last week got 76 points, and I think she did nothing for that week. And just Captain Haaland, sorry. So, but in her team, she's got Salah, Morgan Rogers-Palmer, Smith-Rowe, and then she got a return from Konsa, 9-pointer, and Sanchez came away with 10 points. So really, she's ahead of the game. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts on tinkering? Is it something you do often? Is it something you don't? What's your kind of overall impression?
Yeah, I think, as you might not be shocked to hear, I'm not a big tinkerer. I tend to like to go for big, bold bets and then sort of accept the consequences on that. If we were to delve into it a bit more, I guess the real concept of tinkering is when you're labouring over a cheap option. So sort of going through, let's say, all the 4.5 million defenders and going, oh, this one, that one, or the other. I think I don't think that's very valuable. Basically, I think if you look over the long haul, I think that's another important thing about if you are tinkering as well. It's like you tend to look at it one game week. You go for somebody, and then the other person ends up doing well. That's not how you should look at it. You need to look at it over the course of 10 game weeks at the very least. Well, so I would say that if you are somebody who is thinking about that, if you're going to be tinkering, you want to be spending much more of your thoughts and effort on the bigger price players. For example, Son versus Palmer versus Saka. That's where you're going to be, you need to be putting a lot more thought in. Those ones are going to have some big swings. For example, Son could, any of those could go on a 30-point run in 2 game weeks or 3, and the other ones don't do as well. And you need to get your transfers right. So my advice would be, if you're tinkering, make sure it's high asset players, and where those decisions about when you bring them in and when you don't are actually going to matter. If you're trying to labour over whether you're going to bring in a Leicester defender or a Southampton defender, you're wasting your time. Basically, they'll both do the same in the medium and long term. That you can move on, but for your big assets, that's where a lot more thought is needed.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I also, there is a part of me that always thinks it's well worth within your interest to plan quite extensively, particularly with your defenders, and then build from the back. That's always been my strategy. I put together my defenders, work out who can play when, and make sure that there aren't clashes. Obviously, that's worked brilliantly for me. Or not next week, but the week after.
I was about to say, yes, you build from the back, and then your defense is terrible. You've just
I fucked up a bit here, but also the thing is that everyone went for Mikolenko and Robinson as being quite alternative switches. I then made the mistake of bringing Jan Bednarek, but I thought, lol, let's try it. And Lewis Hall not getting a start and not playing means that it's really hindered me. Sure. I don't think I kept on hold of Nico Williams for longer than I thought I would. I was always thinking about going to Leif Davis with Ipswich. I just never made the time to do it.
Have you not done that yet? He's very much on my radar. Ipswich are another one you've got a good run in.
He is on my radar. Does look good. I mean, Ipswich fans will be pleased to know that I've been talking up Ipswich all season and I haven't yet followed through. But
Rita, do you have the cojones to take a points hit to bring in an Ipswich defender? I believe in you. Can you do it, mate? Think of the glory if that comes off.
Yes, I think the glory would be Greaves getting a header from the back post. But I thought about Jan Bednarek, and at one point I was considering having 3 promoted teams in my team, 3 promoted defenders in my team, which would be nuts. So I'm not sure about taking a points hit. I seldom do that. But honestly, my defence is not great at the moment. And if my attack doesn't fire, my attack's been bailing me out basically most of the game weeks. But now my defenders are letting me down. So
the problem is you have no money. So the defending assets that you really need this week are Arsenal, all expensive. Aston Villa, again, they won't be cheap. Actually, is Digne 4.5 maybe?
Yeah, Digne's 4.5, Constance 4.5.
Okay, fine.
So there is some cheap in there.
Brentford, as I already mentioned, and I think the other team near towards the top alphabetically.
It was Brighton. Brighton put 5.
No, it wasn't Brighton. Maybe it was Bournemouth. But yeah, no, Arsenal, Villa, and Brentford are the teams to target for the next few weeks. And yeah, Brentford defenders could be really good differentials. Is it Lewis Potter who's the fullback? I think.
Yeah, but he places the midfielder in the game. So.
Okay, fine. But yeah, I think AJ, he's a pretty good defender. He gets a goal every once in a while. Carvalho as well seems to be the Wissa replacement up top. I think if you're looking for pretty solid differentials, i.e. people who aren't Mbembo, they're very good, and you can see pretty good returns from any of those guys.
But going back to the tinkering, I mean, Stephen, do you think there is any benefit to tinkering? Because I've put a slight case forward for effectively planning your defence and having a way through things and all the rest of it. Is there a line in which it crosses to being negative? Is it ever okay? What's the line for you?
I think the line is the price range. So as mentioned earlier, if you're tinkering over your cheap players, that's not very good. I think also if you're going beyond, let's say, 4 game weeks, if you're trying to do some planning then, thinking like, oh, okay, this person is over 10 game weeks is going to have a slightly better run in than this person over that. people get injured, teams drop out of form, good teams become bad teams become good, etc. So if you're tinkering and you're looking over sort of I'd say probably longer than a 5 week horizon, you're probably wasting your time, I would say. Yeah, that would be my view on it.
Okay, interesting, because I think I would say I would go a bit further and say I think 10 weeks is perfectly reasonable. It's about knowing what your team's going to do and having some ideas to chuck in it as and when. I wouldn't say like banking transfers 10 game weeks from now. I mean more like knowing that, right, Brighton have a run here, I'm going to hold them until game week 8. Oh, okay, no, Brentford now have a better run, and now switch to Brentford, because that's what I did. So I went in on Brighton for the 2 games that were pretty good, and now I've gone across to Brentford, who now have a good run, as you said. So I think that type of tinkering is okay. I think it's more when it gets into an obsessive nature of, well, if I can move it here, there, and all the rest of it, you kind of look like the meme of the guy with loads of strings of paper attached to a board, and he's staring at you like, no, this is the theory, and all the rest of it. So I think there is something said to be tinkering, but,
the one thing I will say that goes against that this season, because of the 5 transfer rule, this season you can tinker a lot. I know you were talking about earlier about sort of having an extra free hit, sort of, and I think there's a lot of merit in that. It does sort of give you sort of a free hit per week if you're smart about it. So the other team I was thinking of earlier, was Bournemouth. So Bournemouth have Southampton and Leicester coming up. Then they have Arsenal, Villa, City. So 2 very easy fixtures, then the 3 hardest fixtures in the game. But given you've got 5 transfers, why can't you bring in at Bournemouth? Why can't you bring a Semenyo in for 2 game weeks and then get rid of him then, for example? Just you can now. I think tinkering is when you bring in one player, then get them out the next week. But I think with the 5 transfer rule, if a team has 2 promoted teams back to back, like Bournemouth do, then I think they become a real option now. When you were capped at 2 transfers, less so. But if you've got a max of 5, if they've got 2 back to back, then get those players in. Maybe even get 2 in. I mean, Semenyo's was one player that I like a lot. I won't claim to know the Bournemouth team that well, but they could be one. They could be a very interesting one over the next couple of game weeks.
Yeah, I think so. I worry about Bournemouth to a certain extent, because I think it could be another example of me trying to go for those quicker wins. I mean, I think you are right. I hadn't thought about them, to be honest. Southampton and Leicester, great couple of fixtures, and their top scoring defender is Adam Smith, and he's got 1 clean. Oh, no, he's got 5 points at home to Chelsea somehow when they lost 1-0. How the hell has he managed that? So yeah, not the most ideal hunting ground, but yeah, I've kind of forgotten about Semenyo, to be honest. So yeah, look, I think what we're saying here is that tinkering is okay. Just know the limits. Don't get too excited. Don't run away with it. And our podcast editor will know all about that. As her piece of advice to me today was just captain Haaland, which I think is excellent advice to bring there. But yeah, if you are having problems with tinkering, look, listen to a podcast or 2. Maybe in the gym on a Friday, then make your transfers, or on the way to work on a Thursday, and make your transfers, and then just leave it and see how you go. At the end of the day, it's a game. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, try not to obsess too much about it, as much as we do anyway, Steve. I don't know about
exactly. You. So Barry, other than November, any other hot tips you have this week? Any of the players that you don't have that you're worried about?
Yeah, Trent is in my mind and in my thoughts constantly. I actually did a draft where I could get him in, but I was sacrificing Salah and going down to Diaz. And look, Diaz is the hot take of everyone's perspective at the moment. He's what everyone is going for. But, I think for just a consistent player, Salah will outscore him at the end of the season. You've heard that here first. I'm going to clip it off if I'm wrong. But he has got a couple of monster hauls. I mean, you're talking 3, 14, 15, 3, 16. I mean, that is a monster, a load of returns. But what I am noticing there is he's played 90 minutes the first game, 71, 65, 60, 71. So it's not a given that he's going to do really well. I've also noticed Palmer's up there again. Look, I've got Saka. I'm happy with Saka for the next 2. next 3 even probably, and then he runs into a difficult form. And the final player I'm thinking about is David Raya.
You think he's worth the price?
I think he is. I think I might be breaking my one rule, and I'm buttering it up for a wild card where I will probably start with Raya and Trent in my defence, and then have two 4.5s, and then two maybe 4s, or one more 4.5 and another 4. The problem with that, of course, is it's going to be very hard for me to fit in Salah and Haaland in that thing. So in that template. Sorry.
The other issue is Raya's already gone up in price by 100k, and he's also just picked up an injury. Doesn't look like a bad one.
Yeah, well,
but
it's classic. Classic. Sorry, I was taking a swig of my beer at that point. But I think, look, Raya's great keeper. I mean, he seems to have all the attributes to be a really top goalkeeper, and he's top of the points by 3. But for 5.6, that's decent. In the Man City game, he got 4 points. Tottenham game, 9 points. Aston Villa 10 and Wolves 8. The only game that he's failed to get more than just 2 playing points is the Brighton game. So, look, and the next couple of fixtures are beautiful. Leicester at home, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away. He's then got a tough set of fixtures afterwards. Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, Chelsea away. But then it runs into some nice new greens. And the rest of the season, there's only Man City at home and Liverpool away that I would really class as really difficult fixtures. And that might be really insulting to Man City, Man United, Chelsea and Spurs fans. But let's be real about where Arsenal are. Liverpool and Man City are the only teams that are really going to challenge them to a level where you could see them potentially losing. But yeah, I think they're in incredible form. So David Raya could be a keeper you keep for the whole season. And then, of course, you just chuck 4.0 like Fabianski on your bench. You might play every now and again, but you don't need him to because you will start Raya every single week.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, like I said, Raya's in my thoughts, Trent's in my thoughts, Palmer's in my thoughts, but you can't have them. So it's about sort of going with the gut, I suppose.
Fair enough. Well, do you know what? I've been thinking about this. I said I was going to roll a transfer, but it just keeps calling to me. The player that I'm really terrified about is Mbeumo. I think he's going to get such a big haul. West Ham are all over the place.
Stephen, I have Mbeumo in my team.
I know. So I'm not going for him. I'm going for the person who his strike partner up top, the Heskey to his Owen. I'm going for Cavalier. So watch him not start, and my dreams be crushed. But either way, the transfer.
How much is he? 4.9.
He's 4.8.
4.8.
Yeah, I've gotten rid of Gordon. Newcastle don't look good this season, and they've got Man City. So again, watch him score. But yeah, I've gone for Cavalier.
I mean, did he even start the last couple of games?
Yeah, he started the last game. Yeah, he
started against Spurs.
Yeah. He plays. He's basically Wiss's replacement up top, essentially.
Yeah, he's broke a Leighton Orient hearts by scoring 2 goals in the League Cup after we scored the first goal.
There you go. Yes,
6 minutes. Brilliant. So, we'll watch that with intrigue as it develops. I mean, they've not had a good run of it with injuries, so let's see what happens. But wow, listeners, you see how much he gets rattled into making transfers. So, look, I think we've covered that point with the tinkering there, and then proven that tinkering also can work, can't work, and then Stephen makes an impulse transfer. So, some confused messaging, I think, is fair to say. And we're going to move on to our final section, which is the football heritage. There we go. That's terrible. Absolutely appalling. I'm selling myself, but I don't care. So you may remember last week we asked you the question about yellow cards. So previous to that, we had the Bournemouth Chelsea game, which a new record was set for 14 yellow cards, which were issued in one game, and the previous record was 13. And the question was which 2 teams were involved in that fixture last time. And I can tell you now the answer to that question. It wasn't a game from the 90s. It was a game from maybe 2 seasons ago, and that was against Tottenham against Sheffield United, a feisty end of season game in which I believe was it Tanguy and Ndombele scored the first goal, which is unbelievable. So 13 yellow cards in that game. That was the previous record. Well done if you've got those 2 teams. And if you did, please comment in the sections below in Twitter, Instagram, and the rest of it. But the question this week is more related to Crystal Palace's result, where they drew at home to Man United, where I got that lovely 9-pointer. So the question is quite simple, really. It is the goalless draw, that Eric Ten Hag has had in the Premier League. So that's out of 81 games, which is phenomenal in itself. But who could you tell me their first 0-0 draw was? It was between them and one other team. They got a 0-0. It was their first 0-0 under the Ten Hag era. They've had 4 since. So who was the first team for them to get a 0-0 draw? It's an interesting question. I mean, what do you think about that, Stephen? 4 0-0s in the whole 2-year period, Ten Hag.
Yes, but I just think 0-0s are a lot rarer now. Wasn't it like a season ago? It took like there was a game week 10 where there was a 0-0 or something like that. Just where goals. There's just more goals in modern football essentially. So 4 out of 8. Yeah, I don't think that's the worst thing for Ten Hag. I think of all the stats that are pretty damning of his, that's probably lower down on the list.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So that's the question. It's who was the first opponent to get a 0-0 draw against Ten Hag's men at Man United. And so that leaves us to say thank you for listening. Please do give us a like, a subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, preferably not in the street, but if you must. And also we're going to give a shout out to Rita, our editor and producer, yet again, who is marshalling this podcast from the absolute chaos that is our lives into actually making it work. Apologies for the podcast being late last week. It will be less late this week, which is good. And wherever you are, I hope you have a great smashing game week. And that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Good luck. Bye.
Are you telling me you were right?
Again.